wasn't in the body for the impact. I left my body, turned around, and watched the accident happen in slow motion. I suddenly realized, my God, the world is just a dream, because this is just like waking up from a bad dream. You suddenly are relieved and realize, oh, my reality springs from a higher level of that. That's just a dream. It could never really hurt me. There is a real world that God made, but what we're experiencing is this world. Life is a dream.
The A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast.
I'm here with Cailín Callaghan. In 1978, she had a near-death experience while horseback riding. She had this huge accident, and she's going to talk about her experience, everything she's learned. Hi, Cailín.
Hi, how are you today, AJ? It's great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too. So, can you tell us more or less what went on when you were horseback riding and had this near-death experience?
When I was a kid, I was aware that I had this presence with me, and typically gave me what I call chi resonance flows whenever there was something I was thinking or saying or someone else was saying that he wanted me to pay attention to. And there was this inner wordless exchange all the time between this being and I. Now, everyone in my family except for Dad said, that's an imaginary friend. That's all that is. My dad, on the other hand, said to me, you may not know it yet, but there's a little voice in your mind that tells you right from wrong. You'll recognize it because it will tell you not to do the thing you want to do. Okay. And he told me, if you follow that voice all your life, it'll lead you down the path you came here to walk. And it'll get stronger and louder. And while he was saying this, my skin just rose and goose-fleshed, like when Michael wanted me to pay attention. That's what happened. I leaned on what Dad said for many years because I had gotten that testimony, that witnessing with the chi flow. But the rest of the family was, it's just an imaginary friend. And, you want your family to love you. And so you try to comply with their concept of what reality is. So I set him aside as an imaginary friend at about the age of 15. And I got into some, risky behaviors because, no surprise, all the magic went right out of my life when I stopped attending to this inner voice, right? Now, it's a wordless voice, spoken concepts and images and feelings, right? But all the magic went out of my life and I got kind of depressed. And so I was engaging in a lot of risky behaviors, and that's how I got myself killed. At the age of 20, in 1978, I went out horseback riding with a friend of mine named Tammy, and I had forgotten to bring the grain to lure in the two horses. And Ticker, the one horse, was easy to catch. She liked people. She particularly liked us. And I don't remember the name of the horse that was the problem, but he's a stallion and he was very large. So I thought the way to catch him was to get on Ticker, who was a very maneuverable barrel mare, and chase him into a smaller paddock where we could catch him. And Tammy didn't think it was a great idea. And my inner voice didn't think it was a great idea. I still heard him. I just didn't pay any attention to him. And so I tried to chase this horse into the paddock. And I was on his back, on the back of the barrel mare, chasing very close behind him. And everything slipped into slow motion. Now, this has happened to me all my life. Right before something goes down, time shifts, right? And I saw his rump rising up in slow motion, the horse in front of me, right? And I was very close. And the inner voice said, who I'd always called Michael. Michael said, he's kicking. And I said, so what? He can't get me up here. I actually responded to him. And of course, I was very wrong. He kicked me a glancing blow with his right rear hoof right here. But I wasn't in the body for the impact. As I saw the hoof coming towards my face, Michael has done this many times too, I left my body or Michael took me out of it. I don't know. Anyway, so I went about 100, maybe 120 or so feet away, turned around and watched the accident happen in slow motion. And I saw the arms let go and the head snap back, and then the horse that had been under me striding right out from underneath the body as the body fell backwards onto the rump and bounced for about 3 strides. The body went right over the back, landed on its head, and then the hips and the legs finally hit, and the dust flew up, and it seemed to hang in the air. And suddenly, right at that instant, I was in a lustrous vast. I wouldn't say it's empty. Everything seems to be there, but only on the brink of manifesting. It's like where everything is ready to manifest, but nothing is present. It felt like velvet, and it had a sheen like gasoline on water in the sun. And I felt perfect. The environment felt so benevolent, and I felt really perfect. And I said to myself, perfect, I'm perfect. Nothing can ever hurt me again. Sad comment on your life that that's your first thought after you get out of it, right? Nothing can ever hurt me again, you know? And Michael was suddenly, I was aware of his presence. He was there all along, but at that juncture, I became aware of his presence, and he said, nothing could have ever hurt you to begin with. You are an eternal being. Okay, so at this point, I suddenly realized, my God, the world is just a dream, because this is just like waking up from a bad dream. You suddenly are relieved and realize, oh, my reality springs from a higher level of that. That's just a dream. It could never really hurt me. And so here I'm in this kind of not oriented to the eternal and not fully oriented to the earth anymore. I'm kind of in between and trying to get oriented. And I said, okay, well, I can taste that what you just said to me is true. And I don't know how it works. So I said, I can taste that that's true. But if that is so, then why was it all so scary? And he said, well, it was scary because you believed you could suffer loss and die. That amplified the intensity of the experience, the emotional investment. But we had to do that because if we hadn't, you would have never bought in to the dream. You would have never believed in it. And then you wouldn't have taken it seriously. And as a consequence, you wouldn't have learned what you went there to learn, nor would you have done what you went there to do. And mind you, I'm kind of slowly waking up into this new reality of me. And I said, I don't remember what I went there to do. Can you remind me? And he said, yes, you went to summon your will. And I said, summon my will? And he said, yes. And I said, you mean I went through all of that suffering? I'll put it that way. Suffering just so I could learn what I liked and what I wanted. And he said, no, you must understand what I mean by the will. I shall have to show you. Suddenly, he has somehow sent me back into my timeline. This is where the life review begins. And I am, in this instance, about 18 months old. My mother has bought for me my first pair of brand new shoes, and they're stiff. And I've never worn shoes to this point, except for going to church and stuff. I never wore shoes. So mom's bought me my first pair of yard shoes, and they're stiff, and I didn't like them. And I'm laying on the floor, screaming and carrying on. For some reason, I think, not understanding what shoes are about, I think I'm tied to the floor or something. And I was at once myself as the 18-month-old and aware of all my thoughts and feelings. And I was my mother as well, who was thinking, geez, I saved up to get these shoes, and I need to protect her feet, and I'm concerned. You know, she was thinking, my baby, how do I protect her feet? This should be a good thing, and she's making it horrible, you know? And so from that, I realized, oh my God, we were not a wealthy family at all. We were kind of poor. And so that should have been a moment of celebration and accomplishment. My mother got it done. She got me shoes, you know, and instead, by the way I labeled it, I had made it a very unhappy event. So suddenly, with this realization, I am back in the lustrous vast with Michael. And I said to him, is the point of that that I made that should have been a good experience into a bad experience by the way I labeled it? That's what caused my experience of it? And he said, that's exactly what you did. And all of a sudden, boom, I'm in another episode. And in that episode, I'm fighting with a granduncle who is not treating me in the best way of the one could treat their grandniece. But in that event, I had actually left my body. It was the first time I'd left my body. I was 5 years old. And so I'm observing this happening again while I'm actually living it again. All right. And I go up into the clouds again, as I did in the first, when it first happened. I go up into the clouds, and there are these beautiful jeweled beings around me that I thought were birds, but now I'm pretty sure they were seraphim. It was a glorious experience. And that was the first time I discovered that Michael was with me. So horrible things were happening to my body, but I was having a totally different experience. And I remembered the experience for being in the clouds. I didn't, with Michael and the angels, I didn't pay, whatever happened on the ground with my body was not of much consequence to me. And all of a sudden, well, I knew as an adult what had happened to me, but I come back to Michael in the lustrous vast and I say, did I take a really horrible thing, and because of the way I framed it and with my labeling and the way I was with you, I made it a good thing, even though it was a really not a good thing? For me, it was good. And he said, that's exactly what you did. So there were 3 other vignettes, but each one of them was the same message. It is what you label a thing, an event, that causes your experience of it. And I saw that what we do is we label a situation bad, and then we have an unhappy experience because of the label that we've applied. And then we blame the world that we created with our label for our unhappiness. We're like outsourcing our unhappiness when really we're doing the whole thing. Okay, we're experiencing what we're experiencing, and then we're labeling it, and by that label we create the lens of self-talk through which we experience it. Okay, so at this point I was just so overwhelmed with laughter about how ridiculous it is that we are these powerful beings. I'm becoming more and more in touch with my eternal self, and I'm really realizing, oh, we're these incredibly powerful beings, and we're having this experience that could never actually happen to us because we're godlings. We're extensions of God. So nothing could really hurt us. So we create this entire experience by our labels, and then we blame the world we created for our unhappiness and disempowerment. But we're doing all of it. Okay, so this was very funny. And then I realized, but it's the source of almost all the suffering in the whole world. This not claiming our power, not using it. And so I began to weep. And Michael wept with me. It was interesting because when I was laughing, we were both really laughing at how ridiculous it was. What a joke we were playing on ourselves. And then when I started weeping, he wept with me. We were weeping for all of the unnecessary suffering in the world. And I said to Michael, this is all so clear. And it's so easy to just, once you know what you are, you know you're a godling. It's so easy to overcome all of this unnecessary suffering. And I said, I have to go back. I have to go back, Michael, but it's just a dream. How do I get back into the dream? And he said, well, you've already gone back into it. At all these vignettes, you actually re-entered your timeline, okay? You can enter anywhere you want in the timeline. You can actually go into the future. You can go into the moment before the accident that killed you, avoid the accident, and never have the accident at all. And he said, but if you do it that way, you won't remember what I showed you here because it will be part of a different timeline in which the accident never occurred. That's very important. So he said, the only way, this is important too, the only way you can keep this memory and get back into the timeline is to go back into the last moment you remember being in your body. because the last moment contains nested within it like Russian dolls every moment, every antecedent condition that led you to that event. So if you go back to the last moment, you can carry this memory back with you. And of course, he was telling me this because he already knew my intent for going back was to tell everyone so that they could stop suffering, right? But this is a very quantum message, what he's delivered to me. This was 1978, and what he is showing me is well outside our understanding of physics at the time, right? So I said, well, how do I do it? And he said, focus on the last moment, just the way I taught you. He had taught me to lucid dream growing up as a kid. And he taught me to get back into my dreams by placing all of my attention on the last moment I remembered in the dream, and then just tunneling back into that experience, right? So he said, just the same way I showed you to get back into your sleeping dreams. You focus on the last moment, all of your attention, and you tunnel back into the experience, okay? Bring on the sensations of what it was like, what was happening, what you heard, what you smelled, what you saw, what you felt. Go back in there. So that's what I did. Now, at first I thought it's not going to work the first time. This seems like a godly thing. Now, by this time, I am kind of becoming a much more powerful awareness of I'm becoming more aware of what an incredibly powerful being I am. We all are. We just don't know it. We put on these meat suits and pretend, okay, in order to have these experiences. And I was just so full of love, right? I just really loved humanity, and I didn't want people to suffer anymore. I mean, this was like a big part of what I actually experienced myself as love, just love. And very willful love, very powerful love, but love. And so I did what he said, not believing it would work the first time, doubting myself. And it worked the first time. There was a sudden rushing, like a wind, and I was back in my body. And it was in very bad shape. Took me 3 tries to get up. The girl that was with me, Tammy, helped me get to my feet. And I was pretty severely brain damaged from this. I still have to this day a few partial seizures every day. That was the gist of my NDE. But in 1978, as I mentioned, these concepts were well outside the scientific paradigm that we had basically adopted in the world, the physics that we'd adopted. And so when I tried to tell people, which I did try to tell them right away, I started trying to tell people, they all said the same sort of things. Don't worry, it's just a brain damage. You'll get better. It'll go away, right? So it took 2 years to sufficiently recover that I could go back to school. I couldn't even walk well when this first happened. I would walk about 10 feet, very herky-jerky Frankenstein, and then vomit. Walk about another 10 feet and then vomit. It's just terrible vertigo. So it took about 2 years before I could walk correctly and actually even regulate. My breathing was off. My breathing was disturbed. Autonomic system was kind of jumbled. But I went back to school and changed my major to psychology. And I finished the 4 years of core courses in 2 years. And I stopped talking about it because I wanted a degree. I wanted a career in science. I mean, psychology was considered a soft science at the time, and I certainly studied neuropsych while I was back studying psychology because I was really interested in the way my brain recovered its memories. In fact, I should mention that about a year after the horse kicked me, I had my little sister had finally talked me into trying cannabis for the nausea because I had chronic vertigo. And it really helped. And at least I could motivate without being really sick to my stomach. So I was sitting on the back porch, taking some cannabis for the nausea. And I was talking to Michael and to God, and I apologized. I said, it really wrecked my short-term memory. I had no short-term memory for 6 months. I had no ability to learn anything really new for about 9 months. And at 12 months, I was even having trouble searching for old memories. So I was sitting on the back porch and I apologized to God. I said, I had a really good brain. You gave me a really good brain and you gave me a good body and I was reckless with it. And I don't know what you can use me for now. But if you can use me, I give myself to you. Okay. Because I don't know how to make this body work and recover the way it needs to deliver the message I came back to deliver. And nobody's listening right now anyway, so we got some time. If you can use me, I'm yours. Well, it was about 3 days before suddenly I started having flashbacks. And the flashbacks I was having were of the accident, the day of the accident, of the voices of children I went to grade school with. I would hear their voices and see their faces in an interior mind space way. Okay, like you hear a song that won't leave you alone, keeps coming back. I heard their voices and their name would pop up when I would, and I didn't even know their names that well when I went to school with them. So it came back slowly. It was like as the brain began to rework through the damaged area, work around it, it seemed to pull memories out of other parts of the brain, stored in different ways, like stored in visuals, stored in acoustic, because most of the damage was back here, right, in the occipital lobes, and so in the next 6 months, my memory totally recovered better than it had been before the accident. It was like memories were becoming integrated along more sensory modalities than I had previously stored them so that I could retrieve them, because it's two different aspects. Sometimes you have a memory, but you can't retrieve it. And that is the case with the last semester of school I took right before the accident. I have the memories in there. I can't voluntarily retrieve them. But if I see someone or hear someone's voice that I knew during that time period, suddenly memories will pop up, triggered by the voice or the seeing that person. I didn't really try anymore to deliver the message. Life got hold of me, and I had to do what I had to do to get by. Gradually fell back into identification as a weak human being, disidentified with my godly estate, our godly estate. And then in 2020, at the end, I had to suddenly stop Lexapro. And I had a really, really difficult time because I had to stop the Lexapro cold turkey and cut my Percocet for pain management in half, all at the same time, because the two of them combined had been giving me serotonin syndrome. So I went through weeks. I couldn't sleep for about 10 days, 9 or 10 days. I didn't sleep at all. The anxiety was horrible. I had been put on the drug for chronic high-grade anxiety and rolling anxiety attacks, 3 or 4 every day. I'd get them. And so I came off of the drug, and that came back with a vengeance. And the body, there was so much pain from quitting both of those drugs at the same time. Physical body was just unbearable to stay in. And so I started meditating at night a lot and doing something. Michael came to me and said, 'cause I was just suffering, and he said, what's the most cherished memory you have? I should mention I had been channeling Michael's work from the age of 35. In 1995, he started channeling works through me. And I said to him, and during that time, he had actually come to me in a very lucid dream, very vivid lucid dream, where I was in this environment I had visited many times in the real world, as we call it. And it was a locker room under a natatorium, an indoor Olympic swimming pool, where I was trained to scuba dive. So he came to me in this dream in that environment. I didn't know why, but that environment, every time I'd gone there to visit it, it had seemed like there was a strong presence there. And I'd wait for other people to leave so I could taste the presence, just be alone with it. So anyway, he came to me at that point. He said, I'm suffering with the Lexapro withdrawals. He says, what is the most nourishing experience you've ever had? And I said, being with you in that dream. It was ecstasy. It was perfect union. It was love. And he said, well, come to me there now. And I thought, well, that's an interesting thing. And so I said, well, how do I do this? And he said, like you tunnel into any dream, focus your attention. Focus. That's all you have to do. And then summon every sensory modality, remembrance, and immerse yourself in it. All of your attention. So I did it. And suddenly I was there with him again in this locker room environment. And it was the same as it had been in the dream, just perfect love, union with my higher self, okay? Embodying that energy. So over the course of the Lexapro withdrawals, I did more and more of this, and he coined that practice imagifestation. You're like putting yourself actually into the environment. You're not like peeking through a window at something. You're there. It's all around you, projected all around you. So I started using this as a way to escape my body. And I did it quite a bit. And what I found was at some point, probably I'd say 6 months into the withdrawals, I decided, you know what? I felt an anxiety attack coming on in the body. I had a little bad thought run through my mind, and then there was, oh no, and the heart and everything, the way it just cascades. It just goes, it sets itself off. I said, I don't have to participate in this. I'm going to put my attention in the locker room. I'm going there. So while my body was trying to start an anxiety attack, I totally focused either on the locker room or doing a task, something that challenged me mentally that I would have to really focus on. And what I found was that the anxiety attack died. Anxiety gets all its power over you from your attention to it. When you pay attention to it, it gets worse. Your attention is your godly power. You're feeding anything you put your attention on, your own godly estate, your own godly power. So because I nearly died so many times, it was 9 months in that withdrawal period. It was 9 months of constant suicidal impulse. My body was so uncomfortable that the brain kept urging me to end it. It kept saying, take the knife, get the gun, jump off a building. It was just anything. And it kept pushing me to do this, just the way the body says, roll over in bed. Roll onto your right side. Roll onto your left side. It's time to feed me. Your body tells you this. My body kept saying, kill it, kill it, kill it. Make it stop. Please make it stop. So I spent 9 months being the observer of my body's talk to me, what the body said to me, and of my own generated self-talk. And this reminded me so much of my empowerment. It put me so much in empowerment over what I said to myself, the lens I chose with the labels I chose. It gave me back, it reminded me of the power over my experience. So all those years later, I'm doing it again, what I saw in the lustrous vast. And I said, it's time to deliver this message. That was like, I was 62. I'm 66 now, or 63. It was at the end of 20, actually the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, I started delivering the message again because I feared I would die, literally feared the withdrawals. I would give in to the impulse to kill the body. And so I started delivering the message, lest I die and everything I had gone through to deliver this message be wasted. So basically all of this comes down to the fact that life is a dream and we're creating this experience together. Our fields, our individual electromagnetic fields are interacting with the field and with each other's field. And we're projecting all of this, okay? And then It could be paradise. There is a real world, okay? That is the world God made. This is the world we're dreaming. God is the author of reality. We are the author of our individual subjective dreams. And so the way you interpret this dream determines whether it is going to be an enjoyable dream or whether it's going to be a horror show. All right. And you can see just the way anxiety would cascade through your system the more attention you paid to it. You can see the way if you talk yourself, angry self-talk about being cheated, disrespected, disenfranchised, whatever, you can build yourself up into a biochemical state, okay, where you're actually reinforcing in your field the projection of this reality that is essentially internal and based on your self-talk. So not only is life in this world a dream because you're an eternal being and you can't suffer loss or die, these are illusions, okay? Not only is this world a dream, but then we superimpose on it layers of our own subjective dreaming by way of our self-talk. The way we label things is the lens that we're seeing through. And Yeshua Christ even told us, you see as through a lens, as through a glass darkly. You see the world, okay? So the world is, there is a real world that God made, but what we're experiencing is this world. The world God made is paradise. The world we've made is this, okay? But we're godlings, and the shift that everybody talks about, the Great Awakening, is awakening to your godly estate in the dream of the world, catching yourself, creating with your self-talk the experiences that you do not want. Okay, you catch yourself that way, you go, oh, I made that more real for myself just now. I saw myself work myself into it. Now I'm going to try other self-talk. And at first you do this consciously, intentionally. Each time you catch yourself talking yourself into a bad dream. I have to give you this analogy. My little sister said to me, you know, life is like an acid trip. When you're on acid, you can see every second your mind choosing between the words that lead to a good trip or the words that lead to a bad trip. I used to think things were happening to me. Then I began to awaken a little bit in the dream, become more lucid, and I thought, oh, they're all happening for me. Every time my life is full of troubles, there's huge blessings if I just look for them. Okay? I see them in retrospect. Oh, I had to go through that, so this could happen, right? Right? So now things are happening through me. They're not just happening for me, they're happening through me.
You've written several books, including a fiction series, but you also wrote two very important books. The first one I read was Rising Lucidity and Master Anxiety. But recently, you published another book, which is called Master Your Mind and Rise. And I should correct myself. You say that you did not write it. You co-wrote it with Michael. So
I'm the scribe.
Yeah, so can you tell us about this new book, Master Your Mind and Rise? Because I noticed that many of the things that you just mentioned are there. You talk about the dream of the world, you talk about imaginifestation, you talk about lucidity. So what can you tell us about this book and how does it present your message?
I wrote Rise in Lucidity because lucidity is awareness of you're observing your self-talk and the way it taints as a lens your experience. That is lucidity in the dream of the world. And it comes to another level. You're having bad thoughts and you stop them and you change them to what you'd prefer and you focus and burrowing into that experience, okay? Put your attention there, and then you actually observe yourself doing that. That's another level of lucidity higher. You observe the metacognition itself. You go, look, I'm doing it. This is working, all right? So at this point, you become the chooser. You actually can literally choose the way you want to interpret a situation, and the way it feels to you will echo that interpretation. So I had just gone through Lexapro withdrawals when I wrote Rise in Lucidity, meaning rise to your higher godly estate. Don't be identified with the body. And I wrote that to help people dealing with anxiety, because I recognize the world is full of anxiety right now, and people really need the skill set of lucidity. Okay, so we wrote that one. And then the next one, and that's specific to handling pathology. Okay, the things that are, behavioral, mental behavioral, and physical behavioral traits, things you want to stop and things you want to manage. That's what that book is for. The next book is Master Your Mind and Rise. And this is using mastery of your own self-talk, becoming the chooser of your self-talk in order to amplify your lucidity. All right, because every time you do this, you become more lucid. And it's a very interesting practice. You notice yourself suffering. You should use all suffering to make you lucid. Okay, you're unhappy, you're suffering, use it to make you lucid. Say, okay, what am I saying to myself that is making me feel this way? All right. And it is in your self-talk generates the emotions. The emotions change your biochemistry, and your chemistry changes your field. And that makes your field an energetic match for the event cascade that you do not want to have. Okay. You catch yourself doing that. And eventually you begin sculpting your self-talk, curating it so you can curate the experience you create for yourself. So the more you do this, each time you say to yourself, what am I saying to myself that's making me unhappy? Then you put it into words. We call this the practice. You put it into words. You distill it down so it's just right. You'll know when you've got it. If you're thinking, is this it? You haven't got it yet. You got to keep working on it till you get it into words. And then usually what happens, as soon as you actually put it into words, you admit what it is that you're saying to yourself. You go, oh my God, that's not even true. I mean, it's usually readily apparent. That's not true. And that's why you never put it into words before, because if you did put it into words, instead of leaving it unobserved, unconscious, you would see it has no power over you. It's not true. The energy of your belief in it, notice in the middle of the word belief is the word lie, your belief in it. Your belief in it gave it all the power it ever had over you and your experience of the world. Okay. So learning this, you can use it, mastering your mind and your self-talk. Each time you observe that that thing you'd been saying to yourself is not true, it's not fair to everyone involved. It paints you preferentially as the hero or the victim, usually, okay? Or your behaviors as justified, all right? And it's not serving you. That's the most important thing. You know it's not serving you because it made you unhappy. That's why it got your attention. So you asked, what am I saying to myself? You started using the practice because you noticed it made you unhappy. So Michael suggests and in the book, we suggest use every suffering to make you more lucid. Then go into the mind, what you're saying to yourself, because you created your mind. You did it unobserved. You weren't conscious that you were doing it when you let those beliefs into your belief system, your mind, all right? But you did, you made your mind. And a lot of things were given to you when you were a child to believe that, by adults and authority figures. And so you accepted them readily, okay? But now it's time to be the architect of our minds, because right now the situation is running away like crazy. People are getting all caught up in their perspectives and their self-talk, and it's causing conflict and much more suffering. All right. So that's why we wrote that one, is so that people could learn to generally use this procedure. And believe me, it's the most wonderful thing. The minute you recognize the thing you've been saying to yourself is a lie, it's not fair, and it's not serving you, the power you gave it to cause you to suffer comes back to you. And the way you feel it is the bad emotion just goes away. It just dissipates. The moment you bring lucidity in and say, this is not true and it's not serving me, the emotion dissipates And that power comes back to you and your lucidity brightens. And if you keep doing this, every time you're suffering, interrogate your mind, interrogate your self-talk. You will find that you and your lucidity, your sense of empowerment over your experience grows each time. You get stronger and stronger.
There's a chapter in your new book called How to Hear Your Guide. I found it really interesting. Can you talk about that?
Okay. Well, I've tried to cover this so many different ways for people because the guide's voice is, for me, at first, it was in concepts and images and feelings. But it was clear. I always knew because the guide speaks to you in the language of your own heart, your associations. Okay? So sometimes you will get something's happening out in the world, you observe it, and suddenly many memories will be triggered in your mind. And they're like a whirlwind of leaf devils being lifted up to your attention. And the guide is the gust of wind that stirs them all to spinning. Okay. So you have to be attentive to the layer of awareness where the guide speaks to you. Typically, our attention, and again, your attention is your godly estate. It is your power. Your attention and your imagination are your godly estate, your power. All right. So typically we've got our attention out there in the world and we're having all this self-talk that's influencing our lens through which we experience it. We're not paying attention at all to the inner discussion, the inner guidance that the guide is trying to give you at all times. Now, the guide loves you very much. Dad was right. If you listen to this voice, it gets louder. Okay. And it will guide you more and more the more you pay attention to it. Okay. But the guide loves you in such a way that is perfect. They would not to impose upon your will. All right. And so the best way to restart your relationship with your guide, because it will talk to you less and less and get quieter and quieter as you keep your attention away from them. The best way is to start fresh and to ask them to guide you, to actually say, okay, look, I know I keep my attention. I've been doing this with my attention out there in the world. And now I'm going to try to turn my attention more inward to hear you. So please be as loud as possible. Please come in and guide me as much as, you deem as necessary. I trust your perspective is higher than mine and that you're totally benevolent to me. Now, my guide serves also as my gatekeeper. I asked him to, in an effort to make his voice clearer, because I am a medium, an untrained medium. I get a lot of input. I did for years, decades. I got a lot of input from the sideband of reality, and so where other discarnate beings are. And I didn't want to be just influenced by any old discarnate being. So I asked Michael, please don't let anyone near my psyche, because they work through your field and your psyche. Okay. Please don't let anybody anywhere near me if they have untoward or bad energy or bad motivations, so that I can trust that what I'm hearing is you. But generally, your guide's voice because it instills peace. It counsels power, that you be in your power, and that you love and forgive. Okay? If you're hearing something that says you're not empowered, there's nothing you can do about this, or you should be angry, you should be hateful, you should seek vengeance. Okay? That's not your guide. All right? That is not your guide. Your guide will speak to you, love, forgive, change your lens.
The last chapter in your book is called The Forgiven World. What is that about?
The forgiven world is the world that you see when the forgiven world is the world that you see, the world that you feel, the world you experience when you set your grievances aside. Okay. The only thing that stands between us and the experience of our bliss and our godly estate are the grievances that we imagine we hold justly. Okay. We have a weird belief system, comes, I think, from Abrahamic law that, an eye for an eye, etc. Okay. But the new covenant with Christ is forgiveness. God's idea of justice is forgiveness. Okay. Because forgiveness frees everyone from the misperception that the dreamers created by seeing through a lens that they projected on the world and doing all of that unconsciously. They didn't observe it, which is why Yeshua said, forgive them, they know not what they do. All right? All in unconscious identification with our self-talk. Our idea has been that if I'm offended, there has to be a tit for tat. There has to be, I'll hit you back. You hit me, I'll hit you back. Okay, that sets it balanced. No, it really doesn't. The only way to actually set yourself free is to either find a way, a story to tell yourself that makes whatever you went through that was making you angry, instead make it a blessing. As I like to say, when the backyard of your life is full of horse poo, it's a sure sign of ponies. But you won't see the ponies if you've got your eyes down on the poo. Okay? So if you want to find the blessings, you have to keep your eyes up. Yes, glance down occasionally to avoid as much poo as possible, but keep scanning for the ponies, all right? Because when you find those blessings, you can ride them into a new level of experience where none of that is even real to you anymore, okay?
Where can people find your book? How can they read it?
The best place to get the book is at our store online, and that's crackedpotpublishing.com. I assume you'll put a link for us. Crackedpotpublishing.com. I also have a new podcast. I've only been trying to do it for about a year and a half, and that's on YouTube, and it's called Imagifester Central, but you can find it at, the usual www.youtube.com/@Imagifester1, just the one, okay? So there's a lot of free, growing library of free lucidity inducing material because, it's like Michael's been telling me all my life, only the lucid dreamer can change the dream, but you have to stay in the dream to change it. All right. So you can find us at crackedpotpublishing.com, and you can also schedule time with me. If you need coaching on lucidity and you really want to, get to practicing it with somebody who's done it a lot. And, I'm 66 years old and I feel better than I have in decades. Okay. So you can also sign up for time with us there. And I do channeled readings. I do a card spread for you, unless you don't want that. And I use my intuitive gifts because I taste your field. My field tastes your field. I have a response in my body to what's going on in you when I work with people. Okay. So that's how I read. And we really look forward to helping people any way we can.
This has been the A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe.